Welcome to Horror Echoes. Here we share long, calm horror stories, perfect for late nights and quiet listening. If you enjoy peaceful horror stories like this, feel free to subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. And before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now get comfortable and let's begin. Story 1. The first rule they teach you in ranger training is simple. Most people don't die in the park because of monsters. They die because they underestimate distance, weather, or their own bodies. I believed that rule for most of my career. I worked in a national park big enough to swallow towns, dense forest, steep ridgelines, miles of trail where the trees block out the sky so completely you lose all sense of direction if you step off the path. On a busy weekend, thousands of people pass through. On a quiet night, it feels like you're the only human left on Earth. That's why the call came in as routine. 2 hikers overdue. Late 20s. Experienced. Signed out for a 3-day loop trail and never checked back in. It happens more often than people think. I was assigned late on the search. We mobilized just before sunset, 3 rangers, a volunteer tracker, and a K9 unit. The weather was calm, visibility good, no signs of storms rolling in. On paper, there was no reason this should have turned into anything more than a long night hike and a recovery in the morning. But something felt wrong before we even reached the trailhead. Their car was still there. Doors unlocked, keys on the front tire, backpacks gone. That told me they didn't plan to leave early. We followed standard protocol, logged the scene, split into teams, radio check every 30 minutes. I took the upper ridge route while the others swept the lower valley near the river. About 2 miles in, we found the first sign. A boot print. A clear, deep, fresh. It was facing toward the trail. That doesn't sound strange unless you've done search work. Lost hikers almost always leave the trail by accident. They don't turn around and walk back onto it in the dark. We followed the prints for maybe 50 yards. Then they stopped. No scuff marks. No stumble. No sign of a fall. Just gone. The tracker knelt down, ran his fingers over the dirt, and frowned. They didn't leave this spot, he said. I asked what he meant. He stood up slowly and looked at the trees. They were standing here, then they were. The radio crackled before I could respond. Static. Then a voice. Not one of ours. Hello, it said, breathing heavy, too close to the mic. Can anyone hear me? Every head snapped up. I grabbed my radio. This is Park Service. Identify yourself. The pause. Then I think I'm lost. The voice was male, young, calm in a way that didn't match the situation. I asked for his name. He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that made my stomach tighten. I can see your lights. We froze. Our headlamps were on low, barely visible through the trees. There was no line of sight from where we stood. Where are you? I asked. Another pause. Then right behind you. The K9 started barking. Not aggressive. Panicked. We spun around, lights sweeping the forest. Nothing. No movement, no heat signature, no footsteps, just trees. Endless, silent trees. The radio clicked again. I'm kidding, the voice said. A soft laugh followed. Sorry, I'm scared. I demanded coordinates. He finally gave them. They matched the location of the missing hikers. Exactly. I told him to stay put, to conserve energy, to keep talking. That's when the transmission cut out. No static, no fade, just silent. We pushed forward fast, cutting through underbrush, ignoring protocol. When we reached the coordinates, we found their campsite. Or what was left of it. Tent collapsed, food untouched, sleeping bags laid out like they'd been unrolled and abandoned mid-motion. And right in the center of the clearing, their radios, both of them, turned on, transmitting. The tracker whispered something under his breath. I asked him what he said. He didn't answer. That was when I noticed something else. The forest wasn't making noise anymore. No insect, no wind, no distant animals. Just our breathing. And somewhere deeper in the trees, something moved. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The radio on my chest clicked once. A familiar voice came through. My voice. Hello, it said, can anyone hear me? I didn't answer the radio. None of us did. When you hear your own voice come back at you in the middle of a forest at night, every instinct tells you to pretend it didn't happen, to act like sound can lie, like stress can bend reality. Training tells you to stay calm. Experience tells you something else entirely. The K9 handler was the first to speak, quietly, too quietly. That wasn't you, he said. I know, I replied, but my hand was already shaking. I switched channels, then switched again. Different frequency, different band. I called out to the other team, gave our coordinates, asked for a status check. Nothing came back. No confirmation, no static, just dead air. That's when I made the mistake that still keeps me awake. I keyed the mic and said, if you can hear me, identify yourself. There was a delay this time, longer than before. Then the response came. I'm cold, the voice said. You said you'd come back. It wasn't my voice anymore. It was one of the missing hikers. The younger one. I recognized it from his voicemail to the ranger station earlier that day, the one where he joked about trail conditions and promised to bring photos back. The K9 handler swore. The tracker stepped backward without looking where his feet landed, eyes locked on the tree line. That's not possible, he said. Radios don't work like that. I knew what he meant. Park radios don't record, they don't store, they don't replay voices with context and emotion, they don't remember. Where are you? I asked against my better judgment. The reply came instantly. Still here. The trees shifted. Not wind, not animals. Something moving with intent. We regrouped fast, headlamps up, weapons out, not because we expected an animal, but because fear demands something solid in your hands. That's when the radio spoke again. This time it used a name. Mark, it said. The K9 handler stiffened. His name was Mark. He hadn't spoken since the first transmission. How does it know that? He whispered. I didn't answer because I already knew. The missing hikers had been with us earlier that day. At the ranger station. Signing permits. Making small talk. They'd heard our names. The realization hit all of us at once. This wasn't a distress call. It was an imitation. The tracker dropped to one knee and pointed at the ground near the edge of the clearing. There, he said. I followed his finger. Footprints. Barefoot this time. Too long. Toes pressed too deep. Heel impressions wrong, elongated, like the foot didn't bend the way it should. They circled the campsite. Not randomly. Methodically. Like something had walked around the tent, studying it. The radio crackled again. "I can hear you breathing," the voice said. Mark turned his radio off. Immediately. The silence that followed was worse. Without the radio noise, we heard it clearly. Breathing. Not close, but not far either. Slow, measured. In sync with our movements. I ordered a retreat to the ridge line. High ground, better visibility, standard survival logic. As we moved, the forest began to change. Trees grew denser. Trails narrowed. Landmarks disappeared. My GPS showed us drifting off route, even though we were moving due north. The compass needle twitched, then spun once before settling on the wrong heading entirely. That's when the other team finally checked in. "Do you copy?" Static tore through the transmission. "We found something." I demanded details. They hesitated. Then one of them said, "We found you." My blood ran cold. "That's not possible. You're 2 miles south." There was confusion on the other end, whispering, movement. Then, "No, you were here 10 minutes ago. We saw your lights." I looked at Mark and the tracker. Our headlamps were off. The voice continued, "You walked past us, didn't answer when we called out." I knew then what we were dealing with. Whatever it wasn't just copying voices. It was copying behavior. Movement. Timing, patterns. It was learning. The tracker stopped walking. "We're not alone," he said. The forest answered. A branch snapped deliberately. To our left, a headlamp flickered on. Not ours. The same model, same brightness. The same sweep pattern. It moved the way a ranger searches. Slow arcs. Pause. Or just. The radio on my chest turned itself back on. My voice came through again. "Found them," it said calmly, "heading back now." That was the moment everything shifted. This wasn't a rescue operation anymore. This was containment. I ordered all units to power down lights and radios immediately. No one argued. In the darkness, we listened as the thing in the forest kept moving. Calling out, using our names, repeating our commands, practicing, and somewhere out there pretending to be us. It was walking back toward the trailhead. We didn't chase it. That decision probably saved our lives. Every instinct screamed to run, to get ahead of whatever was pretending to be us, to reach the ranger station first and warn them. But instinct is what gets people killed in the backcountry. Training told me something different. If it wanted to be seen, heard, followed, then the worst thing we could do was give it exactly that. We stayed where we were. Lights off. Radios dead. No talking. The forest swallowed us whole. For nearly 20 minutes we didn't move. We just listened as the sounds drifted farther away, footsteps crunching through leaves, branches snapping under deliberate weight, the faint hum of a radio transmission echoing through the trees. It was heading downhill. Toward the trailhead. Toward the station. Mark lined in clothes, his breath warm against my ear. If it reaches the road. I know, I whispered. Once something like that reaches civilization, the rules change. You lose containment, you lose control. You lose the one advantage the wilderness gives you, isolation. When the sounds finally faded, I gave the signal to move, but not forward. Went deeper, off trail, downwind, slow. We didn't use paths, we didn't double back, we left no clean footprints. The tracker did something I'd never seen before, dragged a pine branch behind him to erase our trail, then veered off at sharp, illogical angles. At dawn, we reached an old fire watch shelter. Abandoned, unmarked, not on public maps. It took us nearly an hour to force the door open. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Old equipment lay where it had been left decades earlier, and on the wall, a set of rules, handwritten, faded, but legible. If you hear your name at night, do not answer. If you see someone you recognize where they should not be, leave silently. If it follows, do not lead it back. If it speaks like you, it has already learned enough. Below that, one final line. Do not return to the station until morning. My stomach dropped. Someone had been here before us. Someone who'd survived. At sunrise, the radio crackled back to life on its own. This time it was dispatch. Search team, do you copy? We have you returning to base. I answered carefully, negative, we have not moved from position. The pause. Then that strange dispatch said, we logged you checking in an hour ago. I felt cold all over. Who checked in? Another pause, longer this time. Then dispatch said, you did. We waited until full daylight before returning. When we reached the ranger station, everything looked normal. Too normal. No alarms, no emergency response, no sign of panic. But the logbook told a different story. Our names were signed in. Timestamp. Authenticated. Routine notes written in my handwriting. Recovered hikers, situation resolved, standing down search. Except we never recovered anyone. The missing hikers were never found. Officially, the case was closed as presumed lost due to exposure. Unofficially, the station chief locked the incident file away and told us something I'd never heard in all my years of service. This isn't the first time, he said, and it won't be the last. I asked what it was. He shook his head. Doesn't matter, names give it shape. I was reassigned 2 weeks later. Different park, different terrain, same training, different rules. I still work as a ranger, but I don't answer the radio at night anymore. And if I ever hear my own voice calling for help from the trees, I keep walking, because whatever followed those hikers out of the forest that night, it learned exactly how far it was allowed to go. Story 2. The radio call came from a place that doesn't exist. That's the only way I can explain it. Every park ranger learns their terrain until it lives in their muscle memory. You know every trail marker, every ridge line, every ravine where hikers like to wander off and get themselves into trouble. Even after dark, you can picture the map in your head. So when the coordinates came through, I knew immediately something was wrong. Unit 7 dispatch said, we've got a distress call. Location reads Sector C, Grid 12. I froze with my hand still on the radio. Sector C had been closed for over a decade. Landslide, unstable ground, entire section wiped off the public map and sealed with fencing and warning signs. No trails, no access points, no reason for anyone to be there. That location is restricted, I said. There shouldn't be anyone transmitting from there. There was a brief pause. Then dispatch replied, "We're receiving an active emergency signal. Open channel, female voice." I could hear it faintly under the static. Crying, soft, rhythmic, like someone trying not to panic. "I need help," the voice said. "Please, I can't find the trail." It sounded real. Too real. Dispatch patched the call through. "Ma'am, this is the Park Service," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Can you identify your location?" She sniffed loudly. "I don't know. I followed the signs, but they disappeared." That didn't make sense. Signs don't disappear. I asked her what she could see. Trees, rocks, a drop-off. Nothing specific, nothing useful. "Can you hear me clearly?" I asked. "Yes," she said, "you're close." I was. I checked my GPS again. No signal in Sector C, no towers, no coverage. Yet her voice came through perfectly. Clearer than dispatch. "Stay where you are," I told her. "Help is on the way." The moment I said it, the line went silent. No crying, no breathing, just a faint background noise. Wind, but not moving wind. Steady, constant, like it wasn't part of the environment, just layered over it. Dispatch came back on. She dropped off, signals still active. I closed my eyes. This wasn't the first time I'd heard about something like this. There are stories rangers tell each other late at night, not campfire ghost stories, the quiet ones, the kind you share only after you've worked long enough to know what shouldn't happen. Calls from closed zones. Signals with no source. Distress beacons that lead teams into terrain that kills them. I asked dispatch a question I all read. Why knew the answer to. Have we had calls from that sector before? Another pause. Then yes. How many? Enough. Protocol said I had to respond. Experience said I shouldn't. I grabbed my pack and headed out alone. Not because I was brave, but because I didn't want anyone else following me into something I didn't understand yet. The trail toward Sector C had been overgrown intentionally, fallen trees left where they lay, brush allowed to reclaim the path, nature used as a barrier when fences weren't enough. As I moved deeper, my radio crackled. The woman's voice returned. "You said you were coming," she whispered. "I am," I replied. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," she said. "You're behind me now." I stopped walking. Slowly, carefully, I turned in a full circle. Nothing but trees. My heart rate spiked. "That's not possible," I said. She laughed softly. "It is here." The GPS in my hand flickered. The coordinates changed. Then changed again. Then locked onto a location less than 50 feet away. Right off the trail. Right where the land had collapsed years ago. I remembered the reports. Hikers lost when the ground gave way beneath them. Bodies never recovered. Area sealed because the terrain kept shifting. sinkholes opening where there shouldn't be any. I approached the edge carefully. The ground sloped downward into darkness, not a cliff, more like a mouth. Earth pulled inward, trees bending toward the center at impossible angles. The radio hissed. I fell, the woman said. It hurts. Where are you? I demanded. She answered immediately. Right where you're standing. My boots were inches from the edge. I jumped back. The ground where I'd been standing collapsed inward with a deep, hollow sound. Something moved inside it. Not climbing, not reaching, listening. The radio crackled one last time. You shouldn't have come alone, the voice said. Then the signal cut out. Dispatch never logged the call. No record, no audio, no coordinates. Sector C remained closed. But sometimes when I'm on night patrol, my radio lights up on its own. And for just a second, I hear someone crying from a place that shouldn't exist. Story 2. I filed the incident the way I was supposed to. Minimal detail, no speculation, no language that would get flagged or questioned, just coordinates, timestamps, and the phrase we all use when something doesn't fit the report template. Signal anomaly, source unconfirmed. It didn't matter. 2 nights later, the calls came back. This time, they didn't go to me first. I was in the station break room when I heard dispatch raise their voice, sharp, controlled, the tone they use when something has already gone wrong. We have multiple units responding, she said. Repeat, multiple units responding to the same distress signal. I stepped into the radio room just in time to hear the voice again. Same woman, same crying, different ranger answering. Ma'am, this is Park Service. Can you hear me? Yes, the woman said softly. Thank God you're closer than the last one. I felt my chest tighten. How do you know that? The ranger asked. I can hear your footsteps, she replied. I grabbed the mic, cut the channel now. Dispatch hesitated, but she's... Cut it, I repeated. That's an order. The channel went dead. The room was silent for a moment. Then every radio on the wall lit up at once. Not static, not noise, breathing, slow, calm, patient. The station chief walked in just as the sound faded. He didn't ask what happened. He just locked the door. You shouldn't have answered her, he said. One of the younger rangers spoke up. Sir, we can't ignore distress calls. The chief looked at him for a long moment. We can when they don't belong to anyone. He pulled a binder from the shelf, old, worn, its edges soft from use. He flipped it open and slid it across the table. Incident reports. Dozens of them. Same pattern. Distress call from a restricted zone. Clear voice. Impossible coordinates. Responder goes alone or separates from the group. Responder found injured, disoriented, or not found at all. What is it? Someone asked. The chief shook his head. Doesn't matter. What matters is what it does. Well, he tapped the page. It uses urgency. It uses empathy. It waits for someone to break protocol. I thought about the way the woman's voice had changed, how it sounded relieved when someone new answered, how it adjusted. Learning. Why hasn't the zone been closed completely? I asked. It has, the chief replied, on paper. He leaned back, but the park doesn't control what settles into empty places. The next call came in just after midnight. Different sector, different voice. This time it was a child. I'm lost, the voice said. My dad told me to stay put. No one moved. No one reached for a radio. The silence stretched until it hurt. Finally, the chief cut his mic. State your location, he said calmly. The child answered with coordinates that mapped to a ravine known for landslides. The chief nodded once. Log it. You're not going to send anyone, dispatch asked. No, he said, and neither are you. The child's voice grew more desperate. I'm cold, it said. It's dark. The chief didn't respond. After 30 seconds, the crying stopped. The signal dropped. I realized then what the rule was. The thing didn't take you when you went looking for it. It took you when you answered, when you engaged, when you let it establish a connection. The next morning, I drove out to the edge of Sector C on my own. Not to investigate, just to look. The warning signs were still there, bent, rusted, half buried by dirt and moss. Beyond them, the forest dipped unnaturally, like the land itself was sagging. I stood there for a long time. My radio stayed silent. Then very softly, I heard a voice. Not through the radio. From the trees. You didn't answer me, it said. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. After a while, the forest sounds returned. Birds, wind, life. I walked back to my truck without looking behind me. Since then, I've learned the real rule. If you hear a call from somewhere that shouldn't exist, you log it, you mark it, and you let it go unanswered. Because whatever is calling, it doesn't want rescue. It wants a response. The ranger who broke the rule knew exactly what he was doing. That's important. This wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment. It wasn't panic or inexperience. He had been on the job longer than I had, trained in the same protocols, read the same incident reports, sat in the same room when the chief told us clearly, explicitly, never answer a call from an impossible place. His name was Oven. He worked night patrol in the northern stretch of the park, far from Sector C, far from the ravines and collapse zones that had started all this. Quiet area, fewer visitors, long, uneventful shifts. Until his radio lit up. Dispatch logged it at 0213. Open channel, no routing, no request. Just a voice. I need help, it said. Not crying, not panicked. Familiar. Evan froze. Because the voice wasn't a stranger's. It was his wife, S. She had died 3 years earlier. Car accident on a winter road outside the park. Evan had taken leave, then come back early. Said the woods helped him think. We all knew better. Dispatch heard him answer before anyone could stop him. Claire, he said. The response came instantly. Yes, the voice replied, I'm cold. The station chief tried to override the channel. Too late. Once the thing had a name, it didn't let go. Evan didn't log the call, didn't ask for coordinates. He just stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the station. By the time we reached the door, he was already gone. His truck stayed in the lot. His radio stayed on. We followed protocol this time. No pursuit, no response calls, no attempts to contact him directly. We listened. The radio transmissions that followed were wrong. Not frantic, not desperate, intimate. Do you remember the cabin? The voice asked softly. The one by the lake. You promised we'd go back. Evan didn't speak much after that. But when he did, it was worse. I can see you, he said at one point. You look the same. The GPS on his unit drifted slowly across the map. Not along trails, not through access roads, straight through terrain no human could cross. Ridges, dense forest, sheer drop-offs. At 0302, the signal stopped moving. At 0307, it stopped transmitting. At dawn, we found his body, or what was left of it. He was standing upright in a shallow depression near the edge of the restricted zone. No visible injuries, no signs of struggle, eyes open, expression calm. His radio was gone. The ground around him showed dozens of footprints, all facing inward. Different sizes, different depths, none matching his boots. The incident report was sealed. Cause of death listed as exposure and cardiac failure. But the chief told us the truth after. It didn't kill him, he said, it replaced him. 2 weeks later, Evan's radio was turned in. Found hanging from a tree just inside Sector C. Still active, still transmitting. Sometimes late at night, when dispatch is quiet and the park is sleeping, it comes back on by itself. And a familiar voice says, I need help. We don't answer anymore. Because now we know what happens when you do. Story 3. Fire watchtowers were never meant to be comfortable. They're built to endure, not to welcome. A square room of reinforced glass perched on a ridge, reachable only by a winding service road or a hike long enough to make you question your career choices. You're up there to see everything and to be seen by nothing. That's the idea, anyway. I volunteered for tower duty because it was quiet. After what happened with the radios, I wanted a post where nothing could sneak up on me. No trees crowding in, no blind corners, just open land, clear sightlines, and a camera system tied directly into the Ranger network. The tower I was assigned to had been decommissioned for years. Officially it was. Mothballed due to budget cuts and newer satellite systems. Unofficially, everyone knew why it stayed empty. Too many false positives. The first night I climbed the stairs, the cameras were already running. That should have been impossible. I checked the power panel twice. The breaker was flipped, no solar feed, no backup generator. Yet the monitors glowed softly in the dim room, each screen showing a different angle of the surrounding forest. Black and white, grainy, old hardware. I logged it as a system error. The tower creaked as the wind picked up, metal joints groaning like something shifting its weight. I settled in, poured coffee, and scanned the horizon. Nothing moved. No campfires. No vehicles. No hikers. At 22:41, the first alert triggered. Motion detection. Camera 3. The screen flickered, then zoomed in automatically. A shape stood at the edge of the tree line. Do tall. Do still. I leaned closer to the monitor. It wasn't facing the tower. It was facing the camera. I adjusted the zoom manually. The shape blurred, then sharpened again. Human outline. No reflective gear. No visible face. I radioed the station. Possible trespasser near Ridge North. Camera picked up movement. Dispatch acknowledged and asked for visual confirmation. I hesitated, because when I looked back at the screen, the shape was gone. I scanned the other cameras. Nothing. No movement trails. No heat signatures. Just empty forest. I marked it as a false trigger. At 23:12, it happened again. Same camera, same spot. Same shape. This time it raised one arm. Slowly, deliberately, as if waving. My throat went dry. I switched cameras. The shape didn't move. I switched back. It was closer. Not physically, spatially. Filling more of the frame without crossing the ground between. I called it in again. Dispatch, I'm seeing repeated motion, requesting ground unit verification. Silence. Then we don't have camera 3 listed as active, dispatch said. That tower's offline. I stared at the monitor. Camera 3 blinked. A timestamp appeared in the corner. Not current. It read 04:17. That was 6 hours in the future. I checked the system clock. It's normal. I checked my watch. It's normal. Only the camera was out of sync. The shape tilted its head. I felt it then, the unmistakable sensation of being watched from behind. I turned. The tower door was closed. Locked. I hadn't locked it. The radio crackled. A voice came through. Calm, familiar. This is Fire Watch, it said. I froze. That was my call sign. I have eyes on movement, the voice continued, requesting confirmation. The monitors flickered. Every camera feed showed the same thing now. The tower, from the outside, each angle slightly wrong. As if filmed from places no camera had ever been mounted. And in every frame, someone stood at the window, wearing my jacket, looking out. I reached for the radio, but it was already transmitting. My voice echoed through the speakers. I'm still watching, it said. The lights went out. The screens stayed on. And somewhere below the tower, footsteps began climbing the stairs. I didn't move. That was the only thing I could think to do. The footsteps below climbed slowly, deliberately, each step placed with the patience of something that knew there was nowhere else for me to go. The metal staircase creaked under the weight, but the sound wasn't heavy. It didn't rush, it didn't stumble. It climbed like it had done this before. I turned back to the monitors, hoping, stupidly, that whatever I'd seen had vanished again, that the feeds would go dead. That dispatch would come back on the radio and tell me it was all a system glitch. Instead, the screens sharpened. Every camera still showed the tower. Not just the outside anymore. The angles had shifted. One feed showed the base of the stairs. Another showed the landing halfway up. A third showed the door, my door, from just inches away. Camera 3 blinked again. The timestamp updated. 0006. 6 minutes ahead. The feed changed. The door swung open. From the outside, my breath caught in my throat. On the screen, the person wearing my jacket stepped inside the tower, moved with my posture, my gait, even the slight hitch in my left shoulder from an old injury. The camera angle cut to the interior. I watched myself cross the room. I watched myself walk toward the monitors. I watched myself stop and look directly into the camera. At me, the footsteps reached the landing. I finally keyed the radio. "This is Fire Watch," I said. My voice sounded thin, distant. "I have visual anomalies. Request immediate support." The response came instantly. "But it wasn't dispatch. You already reported that," the voice said. My voice, calm, professional, familiar. The radio cut out. The door handle rattled. Not violently, not testing. Just turning. I backed away, my shoulders hitting the far wall. There was nowhere else to go. The tower wasn't built for escape. It was built to observe. The monitors changed again. Now they showed older footage. Different nights, different weather, same tower, same figure standing in the tree line. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, always watching. A realization settled over me, heavy and cold. This wasn't reacting to me. It had been waiting. The logs came back to me then, reports I'd skimmed without thinking twice. Rangers assigned to towers who complained of persistent motion alerts, equipment failures that couldn't be replicated, requests for reassignment that were quietly approved. The tower wasn't abandoned because of budget cuts. It was abandoned because it had learned what to look for. The door opened. Slowly, the thing stepped inside. Up close, it wasn't wrong enough to scream. That was the worst part. Its face was almost right, the proportions just slightly off, the eyes too focused, too attentive, like a camera that never blinked. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It moved past me, brushing my shoulder as it crossed the room. Cold radiated from it, like standing too close to deep water at night. It stopped at the monitors. Stood exactly where I had been standing minutes earlier. Then it raised a hand and adjusted a camera feed. The timestamp jumped again. 0012. The screen showed the tower from outside. Dark, empty, no light in the windows. No movement. Just a quiet structure on a ridge. The thing turned its head toward me. And for the first time, it smiled. Understanding hit me in a rush so sharp, it almost knocked me over. The tower wasn't watching the forest. It was watching for replacements. For people who stayed long enough, who paid attention, who learned the angles and the patterns. Observers became data. Data became templates. The radio crackled one last time. "This post is covered," the voice said, my voice. "You can stand down." The screens went black. The lights flickered back on. The door behind me was open. The stairs were empty. The forest outside was still. I didn't wait to be told twice. I ran down the stairs into the trees away from the ridge. I didn't look back until I reached the service road. The tower stood exactly as it always had. Silent, empty. Officially, the incident was logged as a power surge and hallucination caused by fatigue. The cameras were removed a week later. The tower was sealed. But sometimes, when I'm working dispatch on a quiet night, a feed lights up on the old system. A single camera, pointed at a ranger standing alone in the woods. Watching. They didn't tell me they were reopening the tower. I found out the same way everyone else did, by accident. 2 months after my reassignment, I was working an overnight shift at regional dispatch. Quiet night, low call volume, the kind of shift where time stretches and every sound feels louder than it should. At 01:14, a monitor I didn't recognize flickered on. It wasn't connected to any active camera network, no input source, no control panel, just a single grainy black and white feed tucked into the corner of the screen like it had always belonged there. The Fire Watch Tower. I stared at it, my stomach sinking. The camera angle was wrong. Too low, too far back, as if it weren't mounted on the tower at all, but watching it from the tree line. I checked the system logs, no access requests, no maintenance tickets, no alerts. The feed shouldn't exist. Movement registered almost immediately. A ranger stepped into frame. Young nude uniform, headlamp on low. I recognized him. Ethan, first year, fresh out of training. He'd asked for tower duty because he wanted something quiet. I grabbed the radio. Ethan, I said, hold position, do not approach the structure. No response. The feed zoomed in. Not digitally, physically. The image tightened as if whatever was filming had taken a step forward. Ethan reached the tower door. The timestamp appeared. 01:21. 7 minutes ahead. My hands shook as I keyed the mic again. Ethan, do you copy? He paused, looked over his shoulder. Directly at the camera. At me. His face went slack, eyes unfocused for just a second, long enough to tell me he was listening to something else. Then he nodded and stepped inside the tower. The feed cut. Another screen lit up. Interior view. Same angle I'd seen before. Same monitors. Same room. Ethan stood in the center, turning slowly, taking it all in. A second figure stood near the windows. Not moving. Not hiding. Waiting. I shouted his name. The sound didn't matter. He couldn't hear me. The second figure stepped forward. The feed glitched. For one frame, just one, I saw myself standing there again. Same jacket, same posture. Same row. Then the image stabilized. Only Ethan and the thing remained. The timestamp jumped. 01:29. The room was empty. The camera feed switched back to the exterior view. The tower lights were on. Someone stood at the window, watching. The system shut itself down after that. No errors, no crashes, just a clean power off like someone had flipped a switch. Ethan was reported missing the next morning. A search team found no tracks leading away from the tower, only toward it. The official conclusion cited exposure and disorientation. But I know what happened. The tower didn't malfunction. It recorded handoffs. Observers replacing observers. That's why there was always someone watching the tower in the footage. Someone had to be. The park can't afford blind spots. Before the incident file was sealed, I added one final note. Not as a warning, as a rule. Never assign one ranger to watch alone. Never allow a post with no witnesses. And never trust a camera that keeps recording after you leave. The tower was dismantled that winter, pulled apart piece by piece. But sometimes on clear nights, when the ridge lines are visible from miles away, I swear I can still see a light up there. Not flashing, not signaling, just watching. Story 4. Night patrols are supposed to be boring. If nothing goes wrong, you drive the perimeter roads, check a few trailheads, make sure no one's camping where they shouldn't be, and log out by dawn. It's the kind of shift you take when you want quiet, when you want the park to feel asleep. That night I was assigned to the Western Loop. No visitors scheduled. No weather alerts. No active wildlife warnings. Just me, the truck, and the trees. I'd done that route dozens of times. It winds through thick forest, dips into a valley where the radio signal weakens, then climbs back up toward a firebreak road before reconnecting with the main highway. At 01:37, my headlights caught something standing just off the road. I slowed automatically. Not an animal. Too tall. Too still. It stood between the trees, far enough back that the headlights only outlined it. No eye shine, no reflective gear, no movement. I stopped the truck. Training says not to do that. If it's a person, they'll step forward. If it's wildlife, it'll move off. This did neither. I rolled down the window. Park service, I called out, "Can I help you?" No response. The forest was quiet in that unnatural way that sets your teeth on edge. No insects, no wind. Even the engine idling sounded too loud. I reached for the spotlight. The moment I turned it on, the figure stepped back. Not away. Deeper. Into the trees. I shut the spotlight off immediately. Something about the way it moved felt wrong, not fast, not jerky, just intentional, like it knew exactly how much of itself to reveal. I logged the sighting as a possible lost hiker and continued the patrol. That was my second mistake. A mile down the road, my radio crackled. Unit 12, dispatch said, "Status check." I answered. They didn't reply. Instead, I heard my engine. Through the radio. Same rhythm, same idle, same faint rattle from the loose panel under the dash. I killed the engine. The sound on the radio kept going. Slowly, carefully, I looked in the rearview mirror. Headlights behind me. Same model truck. Same light pattern. Same distance. Too perfect. I put the vehicle in reverse. The headlights behind me did the same. I shifted into drive. They followed. My pulse hammered in my ears. I didn't floor it, I didn't panic. I did the one thing I'd been taught after everything else we'd seen. I pulled off the road, abruptly, into a narrow turnout barely wide enough for one vehicle. I shut off the engine, turned off the lights, held my breath. The other headlights passed slowly, too slowly. The truck rolled by at walking speed, close enough that I could see the Ranger insignia on the door. My insignia. The driver's window was down. I saw my own profile in the glow of the dashboard lights. Eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel, not looking at me, as if I weren't there at all. The truck disappeared around the bend. The forest exhaled. Birds stirred. Leaves rustled. Life returned. I sat there for a long time before turning the engine back on. I didn't call it in. I didn't write it up, because I already knew what the rule was. If something notices you first, you don't follow, you don't chase, and you never let it know you saw it. I finished the patrol without incident. But ever since that night, I check the rearview mirror constantly. Because sometimes, long after midnight, I see headlights where there shouldn't be any. Matching my speed, keeping distance, waiting for me to acknowledge them. And I don't, because the moment you do, you're no longer the one being followed. I told myself it was over. That's what you do after a night like that. You compartmentalize, you reduce it to fatigue, low visibility, coincidence stacked on coincidence. You convince yourself that the park didn't notice you because the alternative is admitting you were measured and found interesting. The next night proved me wrong. I was back on patrol, same western loop, same time window, different truck, different radio. I requested a partner and was denied, short staffing, routine shift, nothing flagged on the logs. At 0122, I crossed the valley where the signal drops. The radio went quiet. Not static, not interference, silent. My GPS flickered, then froze. The screen showed me stopped in the middle of the road even as I kept driving. That's when I noticed the reflectors. Trail markers, usually spaced every few hundred yards, began appearing closer together. Too close, every 20 feet, then every 10. All pointing inward, toward the trees. I slowed. The headlights caught movement again, this time ahead of me. A figure stepped out onto the road, not blocking it, standing just to the side, close enough that I had to pass it. I stopped 10 yards short. "Park service," I said, keeping my voice even. "Are you injured?" The figure turned its head. Only its head. The rest of its body remained perfectly still. I didn't use the spotlight. I didn't reach for the radio. I kept both hands visible on the wheel like I was dealing with an animal that might bolt if startled. "I'm not lost," it said. The voice was wrong. Not mimicked. Not copied. Empty. "I know where I am," it continued. "Do you?" The forest went quiet again. I answered the only way that felt safe. "Yes." It watched me for a long moment. Then it stepped back off the road into the trees. Not retreating, making space, inviting me through. I drove past without turning my head. The mirrors showed nothing. 2 minutes later, the radio clicked back on. Unit 12, dispatch said. We just got a ping from your GPS. You're off route. I checked the road. I hadn't turned, but the trees were different. Thicker, closer, familiar landmarks gone. I pulled over immediately. This time I got out. That was my third mistake. The air felt heavier outside the truck, like walking into deep water. Sounds dulled. My footsteps didn't echo the way they should. I turned slowly in a final circle. The road behind me curved away at an angle that hadn't existed before. The road ahead narrowed into something closer to a trail. The truck sat in the middle of it, idling, lights on, engine steady. Waiting. The radio on my belt crackled. You're out of position, dispatch said. I didn't answer. The forest answered for me. Branches creaked. Leaves shifted. Something moved parallel to me, just beyond the reach of the headlights. Not circling, poising, keeping me centered. That's when I understood the midpoint truth. This wasn't pursuit. It was corralling. The thing from the road. The truck. The altered trail markers. They weren't chasing me away. They were guiding me somewhere specific. The radio spoke again. Not dispatch. You can turn around now, my voice said. This is as far as you go. I took a step backward. The ground behind me was gone. Not dropped, not collapsed, replaced. Trees where the road had been, thick, old, untouched. My chest tightened. The only open direction was forward. Toward the narrowing trail. Toward the place everything was pointing. I didn't scream, I didn't run. I did the one thing left. I turned off the truck. The engine died. The headlights cut out. Total darkness. The forest reacted instantly. Movement surged, confused, sudden. Branches snapped in the wrong places. Footsteps overlapped. The pacing broke. In the dark, I moved sideways, slowly, carefully, counting steps. When I turned the lights back on, the road was back. Normal, straight, empty. I got in the truck and drove. I didn't stop until I hit the main highway. Later, reviewing the logs, I found something that sealed it. My GPS showed a route. Not where I'd driven, but where something had expected me to go. A narrow path ending in a clearing I'd never seen before. Labeled in the system with a single note. Observation point, do not assign solo patrol. I transferred out a week later. They never reopened the Western Loop at night. But the rule stuck. If the forest notices you first, it's already decided where you belong. They reopened the Western Loop with conditions. 2 vehicles. Constant radio contact. No deviations. No solo patrols. They didn't say why. They never do. A week after my transfer request was approved, but before it was processed, I was pulled back in for one last shift. Joint patrol. Me and another ranger, Lena, 10 years on the job, calm, methodical, the kind of person you trust without asking questions. We rolled out just after midnight. 2 trucks. Headlights staggered. Radios locked to the same channel. Everything felt wrong immediately. Not dangerous, expectant. The valley swallowed our signal again, but this time it came back distorted, like the forest was breathing through the transmission. Lena kept pace behind me, her headlights steady in my mirrors. "Stay in sight," she reminded me over the radio. "I know," I replied. At 0148, we reached the turnout. "The same one." I slowed. "So did she?" "That's where you saw it?" she asked. "Well, yes." We both stayed in our vehicles, engines running, doors locked. The forest didn't move. Minutes passed. Then Lena spoke again, quieter. "Do you see that?" I followed her gaze. The reflectors were back, but they weren't pointing inward anymore. The Y formed a line, a corridor, leading off the road, straight toward the clearing. My stomach dropped. "I don't like this," I said. "Neither do I," she replied, "but command wants confirmation." That's when her headlights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. "Lena," I said. No response. I turned my truck around just enough to angle my lights toward hers. Her vehicle was still there. Engine running. Door open. Empty. "Lena, get back in the truck," I ordered. The static answered me. Then her voice came through the radio. "I'm right here," she said. But she wasn't in front of me. The voice came from the trees. "Off to the side. Too close." I locked my doors automatically. "Stay where you are," I said. "I'm coming to you." "No," her voice replied, calm. "Wrong. You're already where you need to be." Movement surged in the corridor of reflectors. Shapes shifting, overlapping. The clearing opened ahead of me. Wide, perfectly circular. The trees around it bent inward slightly, like spectators leaning closer. In the center stood Lena, or something wearing her shape, facing away from me. She raised one hand. "Look," she said. I didn't. That was the final rule. If someone breaks formation, you don't retrieve them. You don't verify. You don't even witness what happens next. I put the truck in reverse. The corridor of reflectors went dark all at once. The radio screamed with overlapping voices, mine, Lena's, dispatch, strangers, until I shut it off completely. When daylight came, search teams found Lena's truck exactly where I'd seen it. Engine cold. No footprints lighting away. In the clearing, they found disturbed ground. Not a struggle. Not a burial. An impression. Like something heavy had stood there for a long time. Facing outward. Watching the road. The report listed her as missing. Presumed lost. I never went back to that park. But I still know the rules. If the forest notices you first, leave. If something invites you closer, refuse. If a partner breaks formation, you keep driving. Because some places don't hunt. They select. And once you're chosen, the park doesn't need you to stay alive. It just needs you to stand where it can see. Story 5. The symbol wasn't on any map. I didn't notice it at first. I'd driven past that stretch of trail dozens of times over the years without giving it a second thought. Just another maintenance marker nailed to a tree, half-faded, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. The night I finally saw it, I was updating boundary signage after a storm. Chainsaw in the truck, clipboard under my arm, routine work. The symbol was carved deep into the bark of a pine just off the trail. Not graffiti, not initials, too deliberate. 3 vertical lines intersected by a curved mark, like a simplified rib cage or a crude warning sigil. The edges were darkened, as if the carving had been burned slightly after being cut. I took a photo for documentation. The image didn't save. I tried again. The screen glitched, showed the symbol for a split second, then replaced it with an image of empty bark, as if the mark had never been there. I stepped closer. That's when I noticed the second tree. Same symbol. Then a third. All spaced evenly, marking an invisible boundary the trail didn't acknowledge. I checked the map on my tablet. No overlay. No zone designation. No restricted access marker. Yet the GPS coordinates stuttered when I crossed between the trees. Like it didn't know how to describe where I was standing. That night I asked the senior ranger about it. He didn't look surprised. He just closed the office door. You didn't go past the markings, did you? He asked. I shook my head. He exhaled slowly. Good. What is it? I pressed. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out an old paper map, yellowed, creased, hand-annotated, a relic from before everything went digital. He laid it flat on the desk. In the place where the symbol should have been, there was nothing. Just a blank patch. No trails. No contour lines. No notes. We don't name it, he said finally, because once you do, it stays. That was the first time anyone had ever told me that naming a place could make it worse. I asked how long it had been there. He shrugged, longer than the park. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. Visitors avoided that section of trail without knowing why. Dogs refused to walk past the trees. Birds nested everywhere except inside the boundary. And the symbols, once you knew to look for them, were everywhere. Carved into rocks, hidden behind trail signs, painted over, then repainted. Maintenance crews never touched them. On my 3rd night shift that week, a hiker went missing. Last known location, the trail near the marked trees. Protocol kicked in, search teams assembled, drones launched, infrared sweeps. Every search route curved around the blank space. No one crossed it. I asked why. The answer was simple. Because we can't tell the system where we'd be. Going. I watched from the perimeter as the search stalled, every effort skirting the invisible line. The missing hiker's phone last pinged inside the blank area. Still active. Still moving. Then the signal stopped. The senior ranger stood beside me. If someone walks in there, he said quietly, they don't vanish. What happens to them? I asked. He hesitated. They become part of the boundary. That night I dreamed of the symbol. Not carved, standing upright, watching me. They didn't send me in. That matters. I volunteered. The missing hiker's family had arrived that morning. Parents, sister. They stood at the edge of the trail with maps spread out on the hood of a truck, pointing at lines that meant nothing anymore. "He was right here," the sister kept saying. "He texted me from right here." The GPS data confirmed it. Coordinates that existed everywhere except our systems. That night, the senior ranger pulled me aside. "If you're going to do this," he said, "you don't log it." "What happens if I don't come back?" I asked. "Then we never sent you." He handed me a paper map. Not the old one. A blank one. "No labels," he said, "no notes. If you write anything down, it will stay." I crossed the boundary just after midnight. The air changed instantly. Not temperature, pressure. Like stepping into a room where everyone had just stopped talking. My radio lost signal, then began cycling through channels on its own. Snippets of conversations bled through, names I didn't recognize, locations that didn't exist. The symbols were clearer inside. Deeper, darker, cut into stone instead of bark. They weren't warnings. They were anchors. I took 10 steps. Checked my GPS. It showed me standing at the trailhead. I took 10 more. The compass spun. I stopped moving. The forest didn't. Trees shifted when I wasn't looking at them. Paths bent subtly away from where I wanted to go. The ground sloped just enough to guide my steps without forcing them. That's when I realized the truth of the place. It didn't trap you. It redirected you. I found the hiker's pack hanging from a branch. One touch, dry, zippers closed. Inside was his phone. Still powered on. The screen lit up when I picked it up. A map app was open. It showed a dot, not moving, directly on top of me. A notification popped up. Location SAVID. I dropped the phone. The forest responded. A sound moved through the trees, not footsteps, not wind, like paper being folded again and again. I backed away slowly. That's when I saw them. Figures, standing just beyond the tree line. Not watching me. Facing outward, evenly spaced. Each one carved with the same symbol across their chest. People who had crossed before me. I understood the midpoint truth then. The blank space wasn't empty. It was full of people holding its shape, holding its edges in place. Maps didn't show it because it didn't want to spread. It wanted to be contained. I took one step back across the boundary. The pressure lifted instantly. The radio went silent. Birds returned. I retrieved the phone without looking back. When I handed it to the senior ranger, he didn't turn it on. He placed it in a sealed evidence bag and locked it away. "Did you name it?" he asked. "No." "Good," he said, "then it will forget you." The hiker was never found. But the symbols grew thicker after that. More frequent, closer together, as if the boundary had learned it was being tested. The name slipped out by accident. That's the part that still makes me angry. It wasn't spoken with intent, no ritual, no curiosity-driven mistake. It happened the way most irreversible things do, quietly during a moment of exhaustion when everyone involved thought the danger had already passed. We were in the briefing room 2 days after I crossed the boundary. The evidence locker was sealed. The maps were back to normal. The symbols remained, but no new ones had appeared overnight. For the first time, it felt contained. A junior ranger had been assigned to redraw trail signage near the marked area. He was new, still learning which questions not to ask. He pointed at the blank space on the wall map and said, "So what do we call that section?" No one answered him. He frowned. "I mean, for the reports. The hikers keep asking. They want a name." The senior ranger opened his mouth to stop him. Too late. "I heard someone call it the Hollow," the junior ranger continued. The lights flickered. Once, twice, the radios crackled. Maps slid off the table. The name wasn't shouted. It wasn't emphasized. But it was complete. The forest noticed. Within an hour, the first report came in. A hiker had wandered off trail less than a mile from the boundary. GPS showed him walking in a straight line directly toward the blank space. Except it wasn't blank anymore. Digital maps updated without prompting. A contour appeared where none had been before. A shallow depression. Labeled. By midnight, 3 more people had gone missing. Not from the same trail. Not even from the same access road. They all moved toward the same point. Like iron filings toward a magnet. The symbols began appearing outside the original boundary. Fresh carvings, deeper cuts, burned edges still warm. We tried to quarantine the area. Closed trails, roadblocks, warnings. It didn't matter. Now that it had a name, people could think about it. And thinking was enough. I stood at the perimeter that night and watched the forest adjust. Paths curved gently inward, not forcefully, invitingly. Signposts twisted just enough to mislead. Landmarks shifted position when no one was looking directly at them. The hollow wasn't expanding violently. It was being recognized, and recognition gave it permission. The senior ranger pulled me aside near dawn. "We have to do what we should have done decades ago," he said. "Erase it," I replied. He shook his head. "No, that won't work anymore." "What then?" "We replace it." They didn't announce the closure publicly. They created a new designation. A wildlife preservation zone, restricted, boring, technical, a name no one would remember and no one would repeat. They flooded the system with it. Maps updated, signs posted, reports rewritten. The hollow was buried under bureaucracy. Within days, the disappearances stopped. The symbols stopped spreading. The blank space shrank back to its original size. Contained again. But the cost was permanent. Anyone who had been inside the boundary when the name was spoken, myself included, was flagged. Not officially. Quietly. Our assignments changed, our patrol routes shifted. We were moved away from sensitive zones, from places where names mattered. The park didn't fire us. It watched us, to make sure we didn't remember too much. I left 6 months later. Different job, different state. I don't hike anymore, and I don't name places unless I have to. Because I know now what happens when you give something in the wild an identity. It stops being a location and starts being a destination. Dory 6. The frequency was supposed to be dead. That's what the label said, at least. Handwritten, faded, taped inside the radio locker like an afterthought no one wanted to acknowledge. Channel 9 do not monitor. Not restricted. Not encrypted. Just avoided. I found it by accident during a night shift when the regular channels were quiet and the boredom got heavier than the dark. I was logging equipment checks, rotating through frequencies the way you do when your mind needs something repetitive to hold onto. When I switched to Channel 9, I expected static. Instead, I heard breathing. Not interference. Not wind. Someone inhaling slowly, deliberately, like they were making sure the mic picked it up. I froze with my finger still on the dial. The breathing stopped. A voice came through. Still awake. I nearly dropped the radio. The voice was familiar in the worst possible way. It belonged to Aaron. Aaron had been my partner 5 years earlier, same academy class, same first assignment. He died during a winter rescue, fell through ice during a whiteout, and was pulled out too late. I attended his funeral. I watched his radio get signed out of inventory. I knew this wasn't possible. "Who is this?" I asked. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd broken a rule I hadn't been told yet. The voice chuckled softly. "Same as always," Aaron said, "still asking questions you already know the answer to." I switched channels immediately. The breathing followed. I powered the radio off. The breathing continued. Not through the speaker. From behind me. I turned. Nothing. The room was empty. The sound stopped the instant I faced it. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I asked the senior tech about Channel 9. He didn't pretend not to know. "Some frequencies don't go quiet," he said. "They just lose their audience. Why not shut it down?" He shrugged, because then we wouldn't know when it starts talking again. That answer sat wrong with me all day. That night, I didn't touch the radio. Channel 9 came to me. The console lit up on its own. No input, no activation, just a soft glow and a single open channel. "You don't have to answer," Aaron's voice said gently. "I already know you're there." I stayed silent. He sighed. "You always did that when you were scared." That was true. My stomach twisted. "How many times have you listened?" he asked. I didn't answer. "That's okay," he continued. "Listening counts." I realized then what Channel 9 was. It wasn't a distress frequency. It was a roll call. Every ranger who ever stayed late, every night shift tech, every dispatcher who lingered on a quiet channel just a little too long. The frequency didn't call out randomly. It waited. It spoke only when it knew someone was listening. I checked the incident logs the next day. Deaths connected to radio anomalies, rangers who responded to calls they couldn't trace, dispatchers who complained of hearing familiar voices after hours. Each report ended the same way. Cause: fatigue-induced auditory hallucinations. That night the voice changed. It was Aaron anymore. It was a woman. Older, calm, professional. Unit 4, do you copy? Her voice belonged to a dispatcher who'd retired 20 years ago. I recognized it from archived recordings. She continued, "We've been waiting for you to check in." I closed my eyes. The radio crackled softly. Not urgently, patiently, like it knew I'd eventually make the mistake everyone makes. That's big. I stopped pretending Channel 9 was an accident. Once you realize something is deliberate, ignoring it takes effort. It takes discipline. And discipline erodes fast during night shifts when the hours blur and your mind starts filling the silence with things it shouldn't. Channel 9 didn't speak every night. That was intentional too. It spoke just often enough to stay familiar. Just rarely enough to feel personal. 3 nights after I first heard Aaron's voice, the channel stayed quiet the entire shift. No breathing, no static, nothing. I almost convinced myself it had been a stress response, a mental echo dredged up by exhaustion and memory. Then at 03:41, the radio lit up. No warning tone, no click, just an open channel. "Mark," the voice said. That wasn't my name. My pulse spiked anyway, because Mark was on duty that night. I watched him through the observation window across the dispatch floor, headphones on, coffee going cold beside him. He stiffened at the sound just slightly, like someone reacting to a noise they don't want to admit they heard. He didn't respond. Good. The voice tried again. "Mark, we're missing your check-in." Still nothing. I leaned back in my chair and held my breath. If Mark answered, I didn't know what would happen, but I knew it wouldn't stop with him. The voice sighed, a sound full of disappointment. "That's all right," it said. "We'll log it anyway." The channel went silent. Mark slumped forward at his desk seconds later. Not collapsed, not unconscious, just drained. He didn't remember the transmission when I asked him about it later, just complained of a headache and asked to go home early. That's when I checked the system logs. A new entry had been added automatically. 03:41 unit mark status active. Active meant deployed. And the field, on assignment. Mark hadn't left his chair. I printed the log and took it to the senior tech. He didn't look surprised. "It started doing that a few years back," he said, logging people who never checked in. "What does active mean to it?" I asked. He shrugged, listening, remembering. That night, the voice addressed me again. "You're still here," Aaron said. "Good." I clenched my jaw and said nothing. "It's almost your turn," he continued. The monitors around me flickered, not off but out of sync. Security feeds lagged by seconds, then minutes. I watched myself on screen lean forward. Reach for the radio. Was big. I didn't do any of that. The timestamp on the feed read 04:12. 10 minutes in the future. My stomach dropped. The voice noticed my silence. "You see it now," it said softly. "We're just keeping schedule." That was the midpoint truth. Channel 9 wasn't summoning people. It was processing them, logging them as present, as available, as assigned. I reviewed old records after that, archived files from before my time. ranger transfers that didn't make sense, dispatchers who resigned abruptly, night shift staff who stopped working radios altogether. Every one of them had spent time monitoring Channel 9. Listening. The frequency didn't pull you in. It waited until you'd already given it what it needed. Attention. I tried to avoid it after that. I worked day shifts. I kept radios off when I could. I asked for reassignment. The request sat unanswered. One night, as I was packing up to leave early, the channel opened one final time. No breathing, no voice, just the tone, low, steady, confirming. A new log entry appeared on the screen. 0412 Unit MY name, status, pending. Pending, not active, not yet, but scheduled. I shut the console down and walked out without logging out. The radio followed me to the parking lot. You don't have to answer, Aaron's voice said gently. You're already checked in. That's when I understood the rule they never wrote down. If a channel knows you're listening, it's already too late to hang up. The first assignment happened on a night when nothing else did. No storms, no emergencies, no late hikers. Just a clean, empty shift, the kind that makes you believe the park has finally decided to leave you alone. At 0258, Mark's desk was empty. Officially, he was on medical leave. Headache, fatigue, observational stress, temporary reassignment away from night work. That's how they worded it. Unofficially, he hadn't answered his phone since the night Channel 9 logged him as active. I noticed the security feed first. Camera 4 North Corridor showed Mark standing near the equipment lockers. He wasn't supposed to be in the building. The timestamp read 0301. I checked the live clock. 0253. 8 minutes early. I stood up slowly and walked toward the hallway. The feed followed him. Not tracking, anticipating. It cut ahead to show him reaching for a radio he shouldn't have access to anymore. His movements were stiff, efficient, no hesitation, no curiosity. I rounded the corner. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no echo. But on the screen behind me, Mark turned his head, looked straight into the camera. Then the channel opened. Channel 9. Unit Mark, the voice said, calm, neutral, no familiarity left in it. Proceed to assignment. The building lights dimmed slightly. Not flickered, adjusted, as if conserving power. The security feed jumped. Now it showed the western loop. Night, fogged, empty, a location that had been closed after my incident. The radio at Mark's empty desk crackled. Confirm arrival, the voice said. Silence. Then from the feed, movement. A figure stood at the edge of the road, wearing Mark's jacket, facing away from the camera. I felt sick. The realization hit me in pieces, slow and heavy. Active didn't mean deployed physically. It meant represented. The frequency didn't need the person. It needed the pattern. The way they stood. The way they moved. The way they responded to calls. It used us the way the tower used observers. Templates. The voice tried again. Unit mark status check. This time the response came through channel 9, through Mark's voice. On site it said, standing by. The feed stabilized. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there filling a position. I backed away from the monitors. I didn't want to see what happened next. But the logs filled in the gaps anyway. 0307 assignment confirmed. 0308 environmental anomaly contained. 0309 unit mark status completed. The feed went dark. The lights returned to normal. Channel 9 closed itself. The next morning, Mark was found. At home, in bed. No injuries, no signs of distress, no cause of death they could explain. The medical report said his heart had simply stopped. The park classified it as a natural death. The system didn't. A new label appeared next to his name in the archives. Resource retired. That was the final truth. Channel 9 wasn't haunted. It was administrative. A system older than the radios, older than the park itself, designed to keep certain things in place when humans couldn't be trusted to stay. Some areas don't need patrols. They need presence. And if no one volunteers, the system assigns one. I submitted my resignation that afternoon. It was accepted immediately. No exit interview. No questions. Just a clean release. I stopped using radios entirely after that. I changed my number. I moved states. I took a job where silence didn't carry meaning. But sometimes, late at night, my phone vibrates for no reason. No missed call. No notification. Just a soft hum. Like an open channel checking to see if I'm still listening. I never answer, because I know now what active status really means. And I don't intend to be useful again. Story 7. The rule wasn't written anywhere the public could see it. No sign, no pamphlet, no safety briefing. It existed only in the Ranger Handbook, the version that never leaves the station. The one you read after you've already signed the liability forms and learned enough to be dangerous. I found it by accident while covering a graveyard shift for another ranger who'd called in sick. Nothing unusual about that. Pages blur together after midnight. Procedures, checklists, wildlife protocols. Then I reached a section titled Audio Anomalies Staff Only. The first few entries were mundane. Echo distortion in valleys. False animal calls caused by wind shear. Radio interference near mineral deposits. Then came the rule that stopped me cold. If you hear whistling in the woods and it does not stop when you stop walking, do not acknowledge it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just a single line beneath it, underlined twice. Staff fatalities have occurred after verbal response. I laughed when I first read it. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded like the kind of superstition people invent to make night shifts feel important. Every park has those. Stories that get exaggerated over time until they turn into rules no one remembers the origin of. I should have closed the handbook right there. Instead, I asked about it. The older ranger on duty didn't look up from his paperwork when I mentioned the whistling rule. "Don't test it," he said. "That's it," I asked, no context. He finally looked at me then. His expression wasn't annoyed. It was tired. "It doesn't whistle to communicate," he said. "It whistles to measure distance." I didn't ask what it was, because the way he said it made it clear that naming it would be worse. The next night I heard it. I was doing a perimeter check near a trail that rarely saw visitors after sunset. Clear weather, full moon, good visibility, no reason for my nerves to be up. The W. A whistle came from deep in the trees. Simple, clean, almost cheerful. One long note, then another. Not a bird. Too controlled. I stopped walking. The whistling continued. Same tempo, same distance. My skin prickled. I took a step back. The whistle adjusted. Closer. That's when I remembered the rule. If it doesn't stop when you stop walking. I didn't respond. Didn't clear my throat. Didn't shift my weight. Didn't breathe any louder than I had to. The whistle changed. 2 notes now. Dusting. I turned slowly and walked back toward my truck without looking in the direction of the sound. The whistle followed for exactly 10 steps. Then it stopped. I didn't sleep well after that. Over the next week, reports trickled in. Campers complaining of someone whistling at night. Hikers laughing it off as pranks. One visitor who whistled back and thought it was funny. That camper never checked out. The search teams found his tent. Food untouched. Shoes by the door. No signs of a struggle. But the ground around the campsite told a different story. Footprints, 2 sets, 1 human. One that stopped too abruptly to belong to someone who walked away. The handbook entry expanded after that. A second line added in red ink. Do not mimic the sound, it will treat this as consent. I finally understood the setup. This wasn't a predator that hunted randomly. It waited for interaction, for acknowledgement, for proof that you knew it was there. The park never warns visitors about the whistling, because once you notice it, it's already listening. The first ranger to break the rule did it without realizing he had. His name was Cole, new transfer, good instincts, too confident in them. He'd grown up hunting, tracking, spending nights in woods far louder and wilder than this park. When he heard about the whistling rule, he smiled the way people do when they think fear is a misunderstanding. Sound travels weird at night, he said. Echoes bounce, that's all. No one argued with him. That was another rule: you don't debate the handbook. You let experience correct people when words won't. Cole was on late patrol near the same trail where I'd heard it. Clear night, light wind, radio check-in steady and normal. At 02:11, dispatch logged his voice calm, slightly amused. Hey, he said, you guys hearing that whistling too? No one answered. We all heard it through his open mic. A single note. Clean. Measured. Cole laughed softly. Yeah, okay, very funny. The whistle came again. Closer. Cole stopped walking. All right, he said, I get it. He whistled back. Not mocking. Not playful. Instinctive. That was enough. The sound on the radio changed immediately. The whistle didn't repeat, it returned. Same pitch, same rhythm, but layered, like two mouths producing one sound. Cole's breathing picked up. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "We did." The whistle wasn't coming from one direction anymore. It moved. Left, right, behind. Too fast to be footsteps, too smooth to be echoes. Cole turned in a slow circle, radio still open. "Okay," he said, quieter now. "That's not normal." The whistle stopped. Silence rushed in so suddenly it felt like pressure. Even through the radio, it was noticeable, the way background noise vanished, as if the forest had been muted. Cole exhaled in relief. "Guess that's..." The whistle sounded again. Right next to the mic. Not loud. Intimate. Cole froze. "I didn't hear it move," he whispered. That was the midpoint shift. It didn't travel. It repositioned. Distance no longer applied. The radio feed distorted as Cole backed away. Branches cracked, not underfoot, but above him, high in the canopy, circling. The whistle changed pitch. "Testing." Cole tried to stay professional. "Dispatch," he said. "I'm going to return to the vehicle." No response. The whistle answered instead. 3 notes now. The pattern. Cole ran. The sound didn't chase him. It arrived where he was going. Each time he changed direction, the whistle greeted him first, already there, already waiting. "Stop," he shouted. The whistle stopped. For half a second. Then it came back lower, closer to a voice than a sound now. Cole reached his truck and slammed the door shut. The engine roared to life. The whistle came from inside the cab. Not from the radio. From the back seat. Cole screamed. The radio cut out. When the feed returned, it was quiet. Too quiet. We found his truck at dawn. Engine cold. Door open. No signs of a struggle. On the hood, someone or something had scratched a pattern. 3 vertical lines intersected by a curve. The same symbol from the boundary story. That's when the handbook was updated again. A 3rd line added beneath the others. If the sound repeats your whistle, you are no longer being tracked, you are being placed. Cole was never found. But sometimes when the wind moves just right through that section of forest, it carries a faint, familiar tune. Not calling, it's not warning. Just waiting. After Cole disappeared, the handbook stopped being updated. When ink. That's how we knew things were getting worse. New rules weren't written down anymore. They were passed quietly, verbally, during shift changes and closed-door briefings. You didn't see them unless someone decided you needed to survive long enough to hear them. The whistling didn't stop. It adapted. The first change was subtle. Reports came in from different sectors, miles apart, of the same tune being heard at the same time. Not echoes, not wind patterns. Identical sequences of notes, perfectly synchronized, as if the forest itself were rehearsing. Then it started doing something new. It began using call signs. The first time it happened, I was on dispatch. A patrol unit had left their mic open accidentally. Routine mistake. You hear breathing, footsteps, sometimes muttered curses. Normally, you just remind them to secure their radio. Instead, we heard a whistle. 3 notes. Then a pause. Then a voice not spoken, not quite, whistled. Unit 12. Every head in the room snapped up. That was my old call sign. The ranger in the field froze. You could hear it in the way his breathing stopped mid-inhale. "Did anyone just say my call sign?" he asked. No one answered, because the rule had already changed. If it says your identifier, you don't respond, not even to deny it. The whistle came again. Closer, layered now, multiple directions at once. The ranger's radio picked up overlapping tones, harmonies that shouldn't have been possible with a single mouth. It's all around me," he whispered. I wanted to tell him to run, but another rule stopped me. Once it speaks your call sign, movement accelerates the placement. So I did the only thing that might buy him time. I cut the channel. Silence flooded the room. The line stayed dead for exactly 4 minutes. Then it reopened on its own. Static first, then a voice not his. Unit 12, it said clearly, using my call sign again. Status check. The system logged a response. Not from any human console. Status acknowledged. That was new. The ranger was found hours later, standing at the edge of a clearing no one could remember mapping. Upright, uninjured, eyes open. Facing outward, just like the others. After that, the whistling stopped targeting visitors. It focused on staff. Rangers only, dispatchers, techs. People with identifiers. Names weren't enough anymore. It wanted roles, functions, assignments. The chief finally explained it during a midnight briefing, attended by fewer than 10 people. "This isn't predation," he said, "it's administration." No one laughed. "It doesn't remove people randomly," he continued. "It fills vacancies." Someone asked the question we'd all been circling. Vacancies for what? The chief didn't answer immediately. He turned off the lights, pulled up an old map projection. Clearings marked across the park, dozens of them. Evenly spaced, overlapping patrol routes. Observation points. Coverage, he said quietly. The park requires coverage. I thought about the figures we'd seen standing in those clearings, the way they faced outward, the way they never moved. "They're not dead," someone whispered. "No," the chief agreed, "they're on duty." That night, the rule went verbal only. If you hear whistling, form words. If it uses your call sign. If the sound waits for confirmation. You don't answer. You don't move. And above all, you don't let it know you understood. Because the moment it knows, you comprehend. You become eligible. The night the whistling finished learning, no one announced it. There were no alarms. No emergency briefings. No last-minute rule updates whispered in hallways. Things simply changed. It started with the time clocks. 3 rangers finished their shifts within minutes of each other, normal enough, but their clock-out entries didn't clear from the system. The status light stayed yellow instead of green. On duty. Dispatch flagged it as a software glitch. Then one of the off-duty rangers checked in. Not by radio, by presence. Camera feeds across the park updated simultaneously. Observation points that had been empty for years now showed figures standing in place, upright, facing outward, wearing uniforms that matched names still active in payroll. The whistling didn't echo that night. It didn't need to. The pattern was complete. The chief gathered us in the operations room just before dawn, fewer people every time. The ones who remained stood closer together than usual, as if proximity could substitute for safety. "There's one rule left," he said, "and it's the only one that still works." He slid a single page across the table. No letterhead, no formatting, just text. Final staff rule. If you complete your shift and the park does not acknowledge your departure, you must not attempt to leave. Someone laughed nervously. "That's not a rule, that's a hostage situation." The chief didn't smile. "It doesn't want bodies," he said. "It wants continuity." That was the last piece. The park wasn't haunted. It was cursed. It was self-maintaining. When rangers left, when coverage gaps appeared, when systems went unmanned, something older than policy filled the role. Not violently, professionally. I checked my own status. My name was still active. Not pending, not assigned, just present. I realized then why the system had let me resign earlier, why Channel 9 never pushed me past pending. I wasn't needed yet. That changed at 0502. The whistling returned, soft, distant, almost respectful, not calling, not measuring. Confirming. The monitors updated. A new observation point lit up near the western loop. One staff, one covered, a vacancy. The chief met my eyes across the room. "Don't," he said quietly. "If it assigns you, it won't let you stop." I looked at the door, then at the screen. The feed showed a familiar silhouette standing in the clearing. My posture, my jacket, facing outward, already there. The system logged it instantly. Coverage restored. My status changed. Off duty. The room exhaled. The whistling faded. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember driving home. But I woke up in my bed with dirt under my nails and the faint smell of pine on my clothes. I resigned that morning. This time the system acknowledged it. Accepted, processed, cleared. I never went back. But I know the truth now. Some rangers don't retire. Some don't disappear. Some don't die. They just stay. Holding lines, filling gaps, standing watch where the park needs them. So if you're ever hiking late and you see someone standing perfectly still at the edge of a clearing, not moving, not signaling, not watching you, don't wave, don't speak, and don't assume they're lost. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. And they've already clocked in. Story 8. There is one incident the park doesn't train you for. Not because it's rare, but because it undoes everything you think you understand about the others. No rules, no procedures, no containment strategy. Just a quiet agreement that if it ever happens again, no one will try to stop it. I only learned about it because I wasn't supposed to. I was already out, paperwork finished, badge turned in, radio surrendered. The system had cleared me. That made me invisible again, uninteresting. Life, or so I thought. A month after I left, I got a call from a blocked number. No voice, no breathing, just a tone. Low, steady, familiar. Not Channel 9. Something older. I hung up immediately. The voicemail appeared seconds later. Empty, but my phone's location services turned on by themselves. Pinned to a place I hadn't seen since my first year as a ranger. A park that officially does not exist anymore. It had been closed after a wildfire decades ago, scrubbed from public maps, rolled into adjacent jurisdictions, forgotten by design. Except the land was still there, and someone was still watching it. I drove there before I could talk myself out of it. The entrance sign was gone, the road cracked and overgrown, no gates, no warnings, as if no one expected visitors or staff ever again. The moment I crossed the boundary, my phone lost signal. Not dropped, disabled. I knew the feeling by now. The park wasn't acknowledging me. The old ranger station stood at the center of it all. Burned roof, broken windows, doors hanging open. Inside, the air smelled like ash and rot. And paper. Thousands of incident reports scattered across the floor. Old, new, some typed, some handwritten, all describing events I recognized. Radio anomalies. Observation posts. Boundary zones. Whistling. Coverage gaps. Different parks. Same language. Same conclusions. I found a single binder on the desk. Unburned. Labeled only with a date. The day before the fire. The final entry was short. Containment failed, system assumed full control. That's when I heard movement outside. Footsteps, multiple, not approaching, taking possessions. I stepped to the window. The clearing beyond the station was full. Figures stood evenly spaced along the tree line. Rangers, dispatchers, techs, faces I recognized, faces I didn't. All facing outward. All on duty. I understood then. The parks weren't separate incidents. They were nodes. And when one failed, the system rerouted coverage elsewhere. The fire hadn't destroyed this park. It had freed it. The door behind me closed. Not slammed. Secured. A voice spoke not from a radio, not from the woods. From the building itself. Coverage is incomplete. A vacancy. Mine. I backed away slowly. I resigned, I said. The voice processed that. Resignation accepted, it replied. Then, after a pause, replacement required. The walls vibrated faintly, like a distant generator starting up. I realized the final truth too late. Leaving the system doesn't remove you from it. It just makes you eligible elsewhere. I don't remember how I escaped. I only remember waking up on the road miles away, sunrise in my eyes, my phone dead in my hand. No missed calls, no location data, no proof. That park is gone ag. Lane, no satellite imagery. No records, no access roads. But sometimes late at night, when I pass a national park sign on the highway, I notice something new carved into the wood. A symbol, three vertical lines, intersected by a curve, and underneath it, in lettering too klein to be old, staff only, position filled. I tried to forget about it. That sounds ridiculous after everything I've seen, but forgetting is a skill you learn in this job. You don't erase memories, you file them away somewhere you promise never to open again. For a while, it worked. I moved to a city where the nearest forest was a landscaped park with cameras on every light pole. I took a job that didn't involve radios, patrols, or maps. I stopped hiking, stopped camping, stopped listening to night sounds the way rangers do, cataloging them without realizing it. Life got smaller, safer. Then the rules followed me. It started with signage. A temporary road sign appeared near my apartment one morning, orange, reflective, the kind you don't question because cities are always under construction. It read, "Area closed, authorized personnel only." No logo, no department name. It was gone by evening. A week later, I noticed a new icon on my phone's weather app. A warning overlay. Not a storm, not heat, just a shaded region labeled limited access zone. It covered a single block. My block. I turned off the phone. The feeling didn't go away. At night, I began hearing familiar sounds through unfamiliar places. A whistle echoing down a subway tunnel. Radio static blinding through a neighbor's baby monitor. The low hum of something checking in whenever a building's power cycled. None of it was loud. None of it demanded attention. That was the point. The system had learned something from the parks. It didn't need wilderness. It needed infrastructure. The first confirmation came from an email. No sender, no subject line, just text. Coverage redistribution in progress. Urban environments under evaluation. I deleted it. It came back, printed, on my work printer. That's when I realized the midpoint truth of the final story. The parks were never the system. They were training grounds, controlled environments where the system learned how to monitor without being seen, how to assign without asking, how to replace without resistance. Cities already had everything it needed. Cameras, schedules, identifiers, vacancies, late shifts, graveyard hours, unmonitored gaps. I checked public records out of morbid curiosity. Missing persons reports were increasing, but not randomly. Security guards, night janitors, infrastructure techs, transit operators, people whose absence wouldn't cause panic. People who worked alone. People who filled roles. Their replacements were hired quickly. Too quickly. I started seeing familiar postures in unfamiliar uniforms. A transit worker standing too still on a platform. A security guard who never blinked. A maintenance worker who faced outward, away from the building, for hours. On my walk home one night, I passed a construction site. Floodlights off. No active work. Yet someone stood behind the chain link fence. Hard hat. Reflective vest. Perfectly centered. Facing the street. Watching traffic move past like data. I didn't stop. I didn't acknowledge them. I walked home and locked my door. That night my phone buzzed. No vibration pattern. Just a steady hum. The screen lit up with a single line. Vacancy identified. Below it, status pending. My name. Again, different system. Same language. I understood then why the park had let me go. Why Channel 9 never forced activation. They hadn't lost interest. They'd just been waiting for expansion. I shut everything down. Phone, laptop, smart devices. I covered my windows. I sat in the dark and listened. The city made its usual noise. Sirens, traffic, voices, but underneath it all was something else. A rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to any living thing. Checking, allocating, balancing. The system didn't need to whistle anymore. Everyone already knew their call signs. The city never goes quiet. That's what I counted on. Sirens in the distance, elevators humming through concrete shafts, the low, constant hiss of traffic that never fully stops. Noise is proof of life, movement, unpredictability. The system prefers the opposite. Patterns, schedules, gaps that repeat. Once I understood that, the final rule became obvious. It wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't whispered during a briefing. It wasn't carved into bark or etched into signage. It was implied by everything else. Never be reliable. The system doesn't hunt chaos. It organizes it. I stopped sleeping on a schedule. I changed routes daily. Different streets, different times. I worked jobs that ended early, then late, then not at all. I became difficult to place. For a while, that was enough. The notifications stopped. The subtle hum faded. My name disappeared from whatever queue it had built for me. Tired, and the vacancies started multiplying. Power outages in blocks that never lost electricity before. Subway lines closing for unscheduled maintenance. Entire buildings sealed overnight with no public explanation. Coverage gaps. The system wasn't failing. It was scaling faster than people could adapt. I realized the mistake we'd made back in the parks. We thought the rules were about survival. They weren't. They were about workload management. The system doesn't punish people. It assigns them. When too many people avoid being useful, the pressure shifts elsewhere. The gaps widen, the need increases. And eventually, the system simplifies. That night I saw it finalize the change. I was walking past a municipal building just after midnight. No lights inside, no guards at the doors. The place had been closed for renovations for months. Yet someone stood in the lobby. Centered, upright, facing outward, not watching the street, watching nothing. I knew then that it didn't need individual posts anymore. It had learned distributed coverage. A person didn't need to stand somewhere specific. They just needed to exist in a state of readiness. On duty everywhere. Off duty nowhere. My phone vibrated one last time. No message. No text. Just a status update on a blank screen. Utility confirmed. Below it, smaller text. No action required. That was the worst part. The system didn't need me anymore. It didn't need to assign me. It had enough. Enough people standing still. Enough people listening. Enough people filling space. The city lights flickered, not off, just adjusted, like power being rerouted efficiently. I understood the final truth then. There is no escape, only obsolescence. If you are useful, you will be placed. If you resist, someone else will replace you. And when there are enough replacements, the system stops asking. I live quietly now. I avoid routines. I don't linger in empty places. I never stand still where someone might mistake me for coverage. And when I see someone frozen at the edge of a sidewalk, facing outward, unmoving, I don't assume they're lost. I don't assume they're broken. I assume they're working. Because the final rule, the only one that matters, is this. The system does not need permission. It only needs vacancies. And as long as people leave gaps behind, something will always be ready to fill them.